So I grew up in a village. My dad's a farmer. My grandfather was a farmer. So I was 10 years old. My brother was about 12 or 13. And my parents had a chance to send me and my brother to the States.
Meet Pradeep. He's 35 and works at a large firm in Texas as a tax accountant. When he was a young boy in India, his parents made the heart-wrenching decision to send their young children away to have a chance at a better life. Pradeep and his brother left their home and their parents behind.
I don't think it hit me, right? Like I'm leaving my parents. Whereas my brother really struggled. I think my brother was at an age where he understood, like, hey, you're not going to see your parents.
But at least Pradeep and his brother were still going to be with family. They were sent to live with an aunt and uncle in Kansas.
They had their small businesses, and on the weekends we would help out, but money was always tight. There wasn't like overspend of anything. It's just like what you needed, right?
Even though money was tight, Pradeep was astonished by how plentiful everything was.
I was amazed when I first stepped foot in like a grocery store like a Walmart. We're used to going into the market to get fruits and vegetables. Here it's like, what is this? Like you can just get everything at one spot. It was kind of culture shock.
It wasn't until Pradeep got older that he understood what his parents sacrificed so he could have a better future.
I really, really feel for my mom. I can't even imagine what she had to go through just to send her boys away for a mother.
This hit home for Pradeep when, as a teenager, fighting with his brother, their uncle took them aside.
He's like, do you even understand what type of a situation you're in? Your mother had to put a rock on her heart to send you guys here.
Not surprisingly, the whole experience of moving to a new country and finally understanding his family's sacrifice affected how Pradeep thinks about money.
No one really sat us down, but I understood the value of money just because I had started working when I was 16.
Pradeep is engaged to be married, and he and his fiancée already know that they want to have kids right away. And Pradeep wants to make sure that his children will have a more comfortable childhood than he did.
I know I could do better. I want to do better. I want to provide what I didn't have. If I want to buy them shoes, if I want to send them to college, I want to do it with my money where they don't have to worry. If they want to go to education, that's fine. If they want to start their own business, that's fine. I want to be there to help them. And it's like, I can't help them if I don't put away enough for myself also. So I think that's what motivates me is I want to have enough to make sure that what I didn't have, they'll have.
And that's where we'll start today. I'm Jamie Rowe, and welcome to What Should I Do With My Money, an original podcast from Morgan Stanley. We match real people asking real questions about their money with experienced financial advisors. Here at Morgan Stanley, we work with a range of clients. Some are experienced investors. Others are new to working with a financial advisor. On this show, you get a front row seat to hear what these initial conversations are like and get answers to some of the questions you might have yourself. Pradeep is very clear about what he wants to do with his money. He wants to make sure his future kids can grow up without worrying about money like he did. But he's not sure how to make that happen. He has about $100,000 in a brokerage account and another $100,000 in a savings account as a safety net. It makes sense that he feels protective of his money and his family. After all, he felt like money was always scarce growing up. But is putting as much as possible into a savings account the right approach for him to take? And are there other financial tools he can take advantage of to help him keep his family financially secure? Pradeep is only just starting his money journey, so he has a lot to consider. But he isn't sure he has enough investments to justify talking with a financial advisor. To help Pradeep understand what his options are, we have Ramiro, a Morgan Stanley Financial Advisor. While some of our advisors specialize in working with clients who have assets of $500,000 or more, Ramiro is part of a team that works with folks whose investment portfolios might start as low as $25,000.
My family is from Chihuahua, Mexico, which is about 4 or 5 hours south of the border. So they came over to the US in their mid-20s. I was their first child that was born and raised here in the States. Growing up in a traditional Mexican household, money was never a topic of conversation at the dinner table. We talked about everything else but money. It was really a taboo topic. So I didn't really grow up having a good understanding of how all this money stuff worked. Fast forward to 2008, my family was greatly impacted by the financial crisis. And I was a kid at the time. I was right around the corner as my parents were having that conversation about what could we have done differently.
When Ramiro was in school, he started to develop interest in learning more about how to manage money. And as he got older, he started taking business and investment classes and eventually became a personal banker.
It's a great place to start building a financial foundation. But after a few years doing that, I felt that I was limited as far as the impact that I could provide. So I figured it was time to challenge myself, learn more, and step into the wealth management side of things.
Ramiro and Pradeep have a lot in common and a lot to talk about.
Oh man, I have so many questions. I don't know where to start because you've also known like your parents are immigrants. We've never really had that money talk. I feel like between me and you, like it was just, hey, you got to be good with your money. You got to take care of this and this, whether it's parents, whether you're a sister, brother. So it's kind of nice to have a conversation that understands that you didn't really have that money talk, right?
Being first-generation Americans, we have that responsibility. So I made it a mission to step into the field to be able to help out my parents, my family members, right? We have that responsibility to learn and to really set up the generations behind us for financial success.
I completely get that. That's exactly what I mean. So the reason I started thinking about looking into getting a financial advisor, because life gets busy and I know that with work and then eventually getting married, having kids, I'm not going to be able to just like be there and, research a stock for 2-3 hours a day. 5 years from now, I want to work for somebody still, make sure I get my CPA license, start a family together. How can you help provide me that like, hey, at this year, you should have this year, you should have this, just going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, what we would do is take a look at your income and expenses. Right? It's really important for us to have a detailed summary of what's coming in from an income perspective, but also what's going out, right? That's going to take into consideration things such as, mortgage or rent payments, utilities, food costs, and those other expenses that come along with living life. And ultimately, what that allows us to do is see what opportunities we have to save and invest more money towards your goals. Once we have a good understanding of your income and expenses, before we think about investing, we want to ensure that you have a secure financial foundation. The first step there would be to ensure that you have a 3 to 6 months emergency fund to cover anything that may come up unexpectedly.
Okay, that's fair.
Usually with an emergency fund, we recommend keeping it in a savings account or even a high yield savings account. Again, think of this more so as an insurance policy. So it's there when you need it, but you're not taking any risks. In the event that you do need it, we want to ensure that it's there for you. Once we have our emergency fund secured, now we start having a conversation about investing for the financial goals that you have.
What advice do you have for soon-to-be parents? What should they start doing? Like, at what point do you also create a trust? At what point do you make sure that your child is going to have college funds when they are out the door, 18, 20, even if they're not out the door? Like, I want to leave them something. I also want to give them a cushion of where at least there's a house or there's some money in the trust that you can get. Like, is it just the 529 plan, or how can a soon-to-be parent plan for all of that?
Well, first of all, congratulations in advance. I think it's amazing that you're planning for this life event so far out in advance, which is a good tell of a parent to be. So As we approach the birth of the child, number one, we want to make this as stress-free as possible. You'll have enough to worry about once the baby comes, and we don't want money to be a part of that worry. So I would definitely recommend having enough cash set aside to cover those expenses that come with the birth of the child. Whether that be medical bills, diapers, or even clothing, we want to ensure that's not one thing that we worry about. As the child grows, there's going to be other expenses that come along with it, right? Whether that be daycare, they decide to join sports, other clubs and events, and we need to factor those things into our budget because those expenses will change.
Okay.
So once you have a good understanding of what your cash flow is looking like for the future and what excess cash you have to put to work towards your investment goals, the next step would be to really take a look at the investment vehicles that are going to help depending on the type of goal that you're working towards. For example, if your main goal is focusing on retirement, we could take a look at making sure that you're making sufficient contributions to your company's 401k plan. Once we have that fully taken advantage of, we'll explore other options such as individual retirement accounts or IRAs. And this could include the use of traditional or Roth IRAs. There's a couple factors to consider when choosing a traditional or a Roth retirement vehicle. In the case of traditional retirement vehicles, you're placing money before tax, growing tax deferred, and ultimately tax when you take the money out. So this could be advantageous for you if you're in a high tax bracket now and expect your tax bracket to be lower in your retirement years. In the case of the Roth 401k or IRA, you are putting after-tax money, which grows tax-free, and you are not taxed at the time of retirement. This could be advantageous for someone that is in the lower tax bracket now than they anticipate to be in retirement.
Okay, that's fair. I completely get it.
In terms of saving for your child's future educational costs, a good first place to start would be a 529 plan. With 529s, there come tax advantages. You're able to make post-tax contributions to a 529, and as long as they're used for eligible tuition purposes, room and dorm costs, or any other costs associated with them going to college, the earnings on that money is tax-free. The next step would be for us to take a look at taxable accounts. With taxable accounts, there aren't any immediate tax advantages. However, they don't come along with contribution limits. So whether you're looking to set your child up with an UPMA or an UGMA account, or looking to set up a brokerage account that you're eventually able to hand off to your heirs, that would be the next best step for you. Once we have the proper investment vehicle opened, we'll take a look at what our investment strategy is going to be. There's a few things that we'll take into consideration for this. Number one, we'll take a look at your time horizon or how much time you have to invest for this goal. From there, we'll consider your anticipated withdrawal period. So once you begin withdrawing from this account, over what time period do you anticipate those withdrawals to continue? And ultimately, we'll review the risk that you're willing to take within this investment strategy for your goal. This could include a conservative, moderate, or aggressive approach. All these factors combined will allow us to determine the proper asset allocation for you, which will give us a good idea as far as what will your portfolio be made out of. Will that include stocks, bonds, or a combination of the two? Ultimately, this asset allocation is going to give us a good gauge as far as the return potential and the risk involved with your investment strategy.
Okay, that's fair.
To provide your children with a better future, the first thing that I would start with is teaching them the right financial habits. As you go through this financial journey, there's a lot of things that you're learning now that maybe weren't taught to you. So I think the most valuable thing that you could pass on to them is this financial knowledge that is new to you and to ultimately set them up for future success.
And for Pradeep's question about when he'd need a trust,
the need of a trust will depend on the types of assets that you hold. Accounts such as 401ks, IRAs, and brokerage accounts have the capability for you to add a beneficiary. so a trust is not needed. Other asset types such as real estate, vehicles, and personal property do not have that option, so a trust could be super valuable for you.
If you're curious to learn more about trusts and what it's like to set future generations up for success, check out the episode A Surprise Inheritance from Season 1. Now, Pradeep brings up a longtime dream of his, starting his own business.
In 10 years, I actually do want to pivot where I would like to have something of my own, my own business, a firm, or really something that I have control over and I don't have somebody telling me how much I can make every year. So my risk of appetite right now would be aggressive for the next 5-10 years. And I would like to retire by 55.
Pradeep has clearly thought about his goals, but he isn't sure if he's taking the right path here. There's a lot in play: marriage, kids, going into business, especially if he wants to retire early.
I think that's one of the biggest things where it's like not a lot of people know what you would need to do in order to achieve those financial goals.
Yeah. So leading up to starting the business, one thing I would take a look at is increasing the amount of cash that you have set aside. The reason why I would recommend considering increasing this is due to the potential change in cash flow. We have no idea before the business gets up and running how much cash flow this is going to be generating and what expenses are associated. The business venture itself will pull enough stress on your mind, and we don't want to worry about covering the next month's mortgage or any other associated expenses. As the business is more mature and you have a better understanding of the cash flow, that'll give you a good indicator of what you're able to do on the saving and investment front. Let's say you're 1 year into the business and you weren't able to contribute at the same rate as you did before. This could ultimately mean that you would have to delay retirement or even spend less in those retirement years. On the flip side, let's say business is great and your income situation has increased dramatically. That gives us the capacity to save and invest more towards this financial goal, which can ultimately mean that you could retire earlier or even spend more during those years.
So is it too much to have more emergency fund? I have 2 years of savings where I know that, hey, if I get laid off, I know that I'm okay, because as much as aggressive I am in a certain category, I also tend to have a lot bigger emergency saving plan because I don't know when you're going to need it, just like you said, right? So is it too much to have 2 years worth?
Ramiro confirms that given Pradeep's plans to get married and start a family, and his desire to start a business in a few years, it makes sense for him to have a cushion set aside. But Ramiro picks up on something important about the way Pradeep is mentally organizing his money.
Yeah, so you mentioned something really interesting, Pradeep. You talked about being super aggressive with a part of your money and also being super conservative with another part of your money. And as you're trying to accomplish a financial goal, you need to be looking at things holistically and not at the individual account level. Because if we're super aggressive on one end and we're super conservative in another, overall, you're just in the middle, right? And there's really two things to consider when you're not properly aligned based on what you're comfortable with. And I'm really talking about the investment side of things. So if you're too aggressive, then yes, you're taking on too much risk. Should the market go through a downturn, then your risk to lose more money is there. But also, if you're not being aggressive enough, the risk is that you're losing out on growth potential on that money. The benefit of working with the financial advisor is that they're there to coach you on that behavioral aspect of reaching the goal.
It can be tricky to know what to do with your finances in every scenario, even if you have lots of savings. This is especially true when something unexpected happens.
It's good to have that cushion, right? There's a certain peace of mind that comes with it. But if, you might turn on the TV one day and you see a headline and it looks pretty scary. So you go in online to your accounts and you press sell because we're going through a recession. And then you fast forward a year later, the market's up 30% and you missed out on that growth because we were overly allocated, in this case, too conservative with those funds. So I think, again, you need to be taking a look at things holistically.
That's actually honestly what I started thinking about too. It's like you said, it's because of that peace of mind that you have. I've always thought about getting a financial advisor, but I don't know if it's the right timing or do I have enough to get one?
That's a great question. And in my experience, there are a lot of people out there wondering the same. Ultimately, this really depends on where you are at in your financial journey. Here at Morgan Stanley, we're able to meet you where you're at, whether you're an investor that's just starting to think about investing, or you're someone that has been doing this for quite some time, and your situation has become more complex and more sophisticated, so you're looking to tap in a professional. I always say it's never too early or too late to start seeking financial advice.
Well, thank you for all the advice that you give. So it's nice to have a conversation who understands that you didn't really have that money talk, right? So it was a very insightful conversation, and I appreciate the advice that you've given me.
It was great to meet you, Pradeep. Your story is really inspiring, and I could relate to it a ton. I appreciate you taking the time and investing in yourself and your family's future.
Now, let's find out how all this landed with Pradeep. So Pradeep, what are your thoughts after your conversation with Ramiro?
Yeah, he's correct on a lot of things where you can't be very aggressive with one side of your portfolio and then be super conservative and have a lot of savings where you're just not really doing anything with because it's not growing. So I can understand that. So seeing what's out there and maybe talking to a financial advisor may help. I'm intrigued enough to take it further because you don't know up until you have a conversation with someone.
Absolutely. That makes sense. What did you think about the idea of having an overall financial plan?
I think it's needed, right? I know my financial plan in my head, but is it really, are you moving money around to make that plan work? No. So I think the next step is being a little bit aggressive with that plan. And then you put it down on paper. So I'm not asking all these questions again the next time I have a conversation with somebody about financial planning.
Makes sense. So Pradeep, thank you and best of luck to you on your wedding, starting your family, and your business, and all the exciting things you have to look forward to.
Thank you again for all the advice.
If you'd like a deeper dive on what was discussed today, or if you're interested in having a financial plan done for you, come see us at morganstanley.com/mymoney. I'm Jamie Rowe. Talk to you soon.
Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC, Morgan Stanley, its affiliates, and Morgan Stanley Financial Advisors and Private Wealth Advisors do not provide tax or legal advice. Clients should consult their tax advisor for matters involving taxation and tax planning, and their attorney for matters involving trust and estate planning and other legal matters. Important information about your relationship with your financial advisor and Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC when using a financial planning tool. When your financial advisor prepares a financial plan, they will be acting in an investment advisory capacity with respect to the delivery of your financial plan. To understand the differences between brokerage and advisory relationships, you should consult your financial advisor or review our Understanding Your Brokerage and Investment Advisory Relationships brochure available at https://www.morganstanley.com/wealth-relationship/PDFs/understanding-your-relationship.pdf. You have sole responsibility for making all investment decisions with respect to the implementation of a financial plan. You may implement the financial plan at Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC or at another firm. If you engage or have engaged Morgan Stanley, it will act as your broker unless you ask it, in writing, to act as your investment advisor on any particular account. If an account owner or the beneficiary resides in or pays income taxes to a state that offers its own 529 college savings or prepaid tuition plan, an in-state plan, That state may offer state or local tax benefits. These tax benefits may include deductible contributions, deferral of taxes on earnings, and/or tax-free withdrawals. In addition, some states waive or discount fees or offer other benefits for state residents or taxpayers who participate in the in-state plan. An account owner may be denied any or all state or local tax benefits or expense reductions by investing in another state's plan, an out-of-state plan. In addition, an account owner's state or locality may seek to recover the value of tax benefits by assessing income or penalty taxes, should an account owner roll over or transfer assets from an in-state plan to an out-of-state plan. While state and local tax consequences and plan expenses are not the only factor to consider when investing in a 529 plan, they are important to an account owner's investment return and should be taken into account when selecting a 529 plan. Tax laws are complex and are subject to change. This information is based upon current tax rules in effect at the time this was written. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC and its financial advisors do not provide tax or legal advice. Individuals should always check with their tax or legal advisor before engaging in any transaction involving 529 plans, education savings accounts, and other tax-advantaged investments. Investments in a 529 plan are not FDIC insured, nor are they deposits of or guaranteed by a bank or any other entity, so an individual may lose money. Investors should review a program disclosure statement, which contains more information on investment options, investment objectives, risk factors, fees and expenses, and possible tax consequences. Investors should read the program disclosure statement carefully before investing. The investments listed may not be appropriate for all investors. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC recommends that investors independently evaluate particular investments and encourages investors to seek the advice of a financial advisor. The appropriateness of a particular investment will depend upon an investor's individual circumstances and objectives. Insurance products are offered in conjunction with Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC's licensed insurance agency affiliates. Since life insurance is medically underwritten, you should not cancel your current policy until your new policy is in force. A change to your current policy may incur charges, fees, and costs. A new policy will require a medical exam. Surrender charges may be imposed, and the period of time for which the surrender charges apply may increase with a new policy. You should consult with your own tax advisors regarding your potential tax liability on surrenders.